Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast. This is a show that will be dropping on Wednesday, July 22nd, talking about racing on Friday, July 24th. It's the return of the In the Money Horseplayers Tour. Go to horseplayers.com, put up your $20, and you will have two ways to win a $10,000 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. One, what we call the traditional method. If you finish in the top 10%, you advance to another contest on Horseplayers on Saturday. Or if you just finish in the top 4 in this Friday feeder, you go into a separate tournament, our playoffs for the In the Money Tour, and the winner of that contest will get yet another $10,000 BCBC seat at no extra cost to players. Been great to see the numbers on the site. We'd like to see your name on the leaderboard. So make sure to go to horseplayers.com and get involved in the ITM Horseplayers Tour. Peter Thomas Fornatale back with you high above the city of San Francisco. I wish, how it won't work with the technology. I'll try, but it won't work. Trying to show what's going on out the window there. Yeah, you can't see it at all. That's the city of San Francisco, people. I'm on the 39th floor here in Union Square. But been following the racing downstate and back east very closely via the magic of modern technology. I'm about to introduce a man who got to see a top-level race, a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Classic last weekend at Monmouth Park. A little bit closer than that. He's TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, how are things?
I'm good, Pete. You'll notice that I've made a move. I'm up into the kitchen now because the camera is still being a little problematic for me downstairs. So for the here and now, we'll operate off the iPad in the kitchen, but everything is good. Yeah, got back from Monmouth. A little worse for the wear. I've got a little, I think it was the smoke, honestly, that kind of kickstarted everything. I've been battling that all week, but good race. Probably better than I think a lot of people thought it would be on paper as far as the two horses figuring at the very end of it. And who knows, maybe they kind of felt like that kind of a year, hasn't it? Where the 3-year-olds just sort of take turns. Who's the belle of the ball this week? I guess Golden Tempo is the only one who has strung together a couple of big ones, but now Baby Vino's kind of the talk of the town.
And that's something I wanted to mention and give Baby Vino credit for. JK, I don't want to say he was unkind, but I'll say he was unimpressed with what he saw in the Haskell. I took a little bit more of a favorable view, just thinking to myself, hey, here's Golden Tempo. He's won all these races, but he's yet to crack what the Brits would call the century mark on the buyer scale. And now Baby Vino has done just that. Granted, the race may have turned out a little bit differently had Paco Lopez taken advantage of what I thought was not an unfavorable rail, let's put it that way, instead of being so far out wide in the track. And anyway, Napoleon Solo ran a good race, but Baby Vino, now he is a player on the scene. What do you think? What's your gut? Is he going to continue to move forward, or is that going to be Baby Vino's signature win at the end of the year?
I'm at a point now, Pete, where I think anyone that says anything definitively about this group of 3-year-olds is just blowing smoke, because how could you have any confidence with, for better or for worse? I'm not saying that these horses won't continue on, but what you've seen now, where it's the end of July, it's about to be August. You haven't seen any sort of consistency from any of them. I guess Commandment a little bit, but he's really not what he was at the beginning of the year in South Florida. Golden Tempo, right now, to me, is deserved of sort of divisional honors. And having said that,
Yeah.
I'm still not bullish on him necessarily going forward. We had a conversation last weekend at Monmouth just comparing the 3-year-olds versus the older horses and some of the folks on the production side, trying to just, and maybe I'm being way, way too harsh on the 3-year-olds, but like if they lined up as is right now, it might be 10 lengths top to tip to tail as far as the older horses versus the 3-year-olds. There's a chasm. Now, this is the time of year that they take those steps forward, right? So maybe the Travers or the Jim Dandy next week, you see some sort of a real big forward move from one of these 3-year-olds. But I guess to answer the question, Baby Vino could suddenly be the star of the division for all I know. He could also never win another race. And you could tell me either of those, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Just to put some numbers to the argument you're making, we did see Knightsbridge on the same card running a 122 on the buyer speed figure scale. That's a lot of points between a top older horse and a top 3-year-old, a grade 1 3-year-old. And let's not forget that Knightsbridge, even though he may be the fastest on numbers, certainly not the most fearsome when you've got horses like Forever Young planning on coming back for a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. We'll have it covered for you all across the In the Money Media Network, especially we're putting a focus on these Breeders' Cup win and you're in races, but just following top racing week in and week out from all over the country with an eye towards my favorite racing event on the calendar, the Breeders' Cup. And it's not as far away as you think, right, Matt?
Oh, I mean, I break this season into 2 6-month segments. You go Breeders' Cup to Derby and then Derby to Breeders' Cup. And you think about that, the Derby now is what, 3 months in the rear view almost for the better part. So we're at almost the halfway point, and this is when you really start to figure out where all these horses fit in these different divisions. You brought up Knightsbridge. I mean, that is among the fastest numbers we've seen in the better part of 5, 6, 7 years, going back to Flightline. I think that was the last big number that we saw, 126 from him in the P Classic. I mean, I don't know that I'm ready to buy him necessarily, say that that's what he is going forward. But if he's remotely close to that, him Forever Young, if Sovereignty can figure his game out, if he ever does, who knows? Maybe he will, maybe he won't. If Baeza could ever get out of the starting gate, we know what he can do. And obviously, Magnitude right now is kind of the belle of the ball for that older division. So, all still to play for over the next 3 months. Going to be very exciting lead into Keeneland.
Let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming. We're going to look at 4 of the races that will be part of the ITM Horseplayers Tour on Friday. We went with a split slate this week. People, that seemed to be the feedback is when Saratoga was alone, people were very happy with the All Saratoga, but with Del Mar in the mix, it's nice to be able to do both. We're mirroring the regular slate of contests on horseplayers.com. So if you're looking at these races for our tour, make sure you take a look up and down the contest smorgasbord, as it were, over at horseplayers.com. You surely be able to find some other events you want to be feeding into, whether it's later on at Del Mar or anywhere else. But let's start by talking about this 7th race on the Friday card. We've got an allowance on the inner turf going 1 mile and a 16th. Who did you like in here, Matt?
I went to the 5 Starship Pegasus, 7-2 on the line. Kendrick's up for the Michelle Nevin barn. The 0-for-2 record at Saratoga on either turf course, inner and outer. I guess maybe that could be a concern, but they were the first 2 starts of the career. I don't want to be overly, unkind. I thought, 2 of the last 3 were quite good. They were all at Aqueduct, and the run 2 starts back, it preceded a bit of a layoff. So I'm willing to forgive that run as well. He's got a couple of 9s on Thoroughgraph. He's got, high 70, low 80 buyers in his back pocket. He's handy. He doesn't have to have the lead, but he should sit a good trip in here. He's not going to be any kind of crazy price, but I should say, I like Starship Pegasus in here.
I get it, and was the first one I had to use along with in exotics, the one that I went with my top pick. This is very much of a contest play for me, I would say. Probably not the most reliable among the contenders, but in some ways, I thought maybe 7 Golden Rocket was the most interesting. Sprint to route, so should be prominent, and does have a couple of back numbers going longer that would be competitive with this group. This is the 2nd race off the layoff, so a move forward is conceivable. And I just thought the price would be right for contest purposes. I was going to go with Golden Rocket, mixing in with the 5 and the 8, were the other ones I was looking at for horizontal wagering purposes. But yeah, I thought Golden Rocket made a little bit of sense as one who could be a decent number. Let's talk about the stakes race in this sequence on Saturday. We've got the grade 2 Chuvy for fillies and mares, 4-year-old and up. And I'll kick this one off, Matt, but I'll do it by asking you a question, which is, for me, this is a race that brings up the old question in this $2 win place format that we use for the ITM Horseplayer Tour games. Is it better to just take points with a favorite or force yourself to get creative? To me, if the answer is the former, Scottish Lassie just looks too tough to me. Grade 1 winner who loves Saratoga. And while she does love to be on the lead and might not be here, can also sit and pounce. But I had one of my favorite mothball angles to pull out of the closet here. The old potential lone closer angle with the 7 runner, Valtellina, at what I'm assuming will be cap type price. Looks short on class, looks short on numbers. But the last race was fast enough to sort of build a case. And if they really burn up, maybe she could get a little bit of a part of it. if I were putting in my contest entry, I'd probably blink and just mostly put 4s, but I might throw a 7 in there. What's your approach when you see a race like this? Before you get into the particulars of this race, just philosophically, how short of a price will you take in the $2 win place format?
I won't take like an odds-on type for all intents and purposes, unless it's a really short field, field of 5, and I think there's a standout if the horse is 2 to 5. Maybe you just kind of swallow your pride and go on from there. I'm not opposed to, if you think a horse is just simply the one to beat, and you kind of think the price is going to jive. There's a massive difference there too, right? It's one thing to sit there and say, well, it's American Pharoah. Well, American Pharoah is 1 to 9. I don't think you should ever bet a horse at 1 to 9, frankly. That's just my opinion, but to each their own. So I'm with you. I think the 4 Scottish Lassie is way the horse to beat in here. Her record at Saratoga is obvious. A combination of things. I do wonder a little bit. I know she's won a grade 1 at 9 furlongs. So this is going to sound kind of, counterintuitive. I wonder what her real game is. I have a sneaky feeling that she's probably at her A+ going shorter, 7, maybe 8 furlongs. She can get out to 8.5. You get out to 9. I think circumstances need to go a long way. Keep in mind that coaching club, it was a field of 4. And if I'm not mistaken, it was Good Cheer, who's a closer who kind of went off form a little bit. I know the other fillies in there are nice, Dry Powder as well as Immersive, but I think a lot of things went her way in that CCA Oaks. And I do wonder if shorter down the road is better. Here and now, the form that she's in, I don't have any real issue with her. If you needed to pick a most likely winner, I think it's her. But kind of what you had touched on with the 7, it's a race that outside of her, the other favorites, I think you can just kind of take your pick. They're all very similar, very comparable. They all have similar running styles. So I would want to go to a price. I'd look for somebody a little bit different. I don't know that she's good enough right now. She needs to take a massive step forward. But I'd go to the 2, Aeolian, going out for Chad's Barn, homebred for Gainesway. You look at the pedigree, she is the younger full sister to Capitrice, who we know was a little bit of a goofball, A, but B, wanted to run 10 miles. And this is going to be the first time that she's had the opportunity to get out to 1.125 or longer. And I have no illusions that she's necessarily among the 3-4 likeliest winners of this race, but just on math, she has to be close to that morning line of 15 to 1. And if I don't want Scottish Lassie as the favorite at somewhere in that 7 to 5, 8 to 5 range, I don't want to just take a dartboard approach to one of the other contenders. I'd probably take a stab with the 2 in here and hope that I catch lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, I mean, I looked long and hard, and I couldn't decide what kind of a trip she was going to get from down at the inside. That's part of why I went outside. But I think our idea is the same. If you're going to go for a price, it does feel like, not that I have anything against Bless the Broken or I'm having a little mental moment here. Fully Subscribed, the other very logical one. They feel like they're going to be just the price to me. Whereas, I respect Scottish Lassie enough that I might go that direction. And if not, let's get creative. Let's see if we can pull in a price in the Chouvet to at least run with the favorite, or maybe, just maybe, get the money and light things up.
You bring up the sort of what kind of trip could she work out, and this is purely me hoping, right? I don't know that this is what they would do, but given that this is a graded stake, I think you brought up sort of the 7 being the lone closer. My hope would be that Dylan Davis grabs. Yeah. Let them all go. The distance should be your friend. And if I'm saying that maybe it's not going to be for Scottish Lassie, or maybe some of these other fillies are going to be, kind of ding-donging throughout, take back and try to make one run. That's usually when you get your crazy things. I think you and I talked about this not too long ago, but the idea that if you're looking for chaos, to me, the 2 scenarios in which it happens, you get a loose leader who everybody just assumes is going to stop and they never do, or you get one of these barbecues where they all throw it down, they start racing, at the 5/8 pole, and then with still about 1/8 of a mile to go, sure, maybe somebody won the battle, but they're going to lose the war because here comes somebody picking up the pieces. I would think, for a combination of reasons, black type primarily, with her pedigree, I'd be stunned if they tried to get involved. I hope they grab, take back, and make one run.
As you say it out loud, it makes all the sense in the world to me. I think I was just kind of defaulting to, well, they're inside, they might get a little bit caught up in things. But I'm loving that trip, and I'm officially going to say I'm now going to imitate you and throw in some 2s as well into the mix. And yeah, many moons ago, long before there was even a DRF Players podcast, let alone an In the Money Players podcast, I worked on a book called The Winning Contest Player. And as part of the stats work I did for that book, back then especially, there was a lot of mythical formats. The BCBC was around, but there was a lot of mythical formats, whether it was the National Horseplayers Championship or just these mythical win place contests. And in those mythical contest formats, long shots long shots are always wonderful as a horse player, but they really do have an outsized importance. So I did a lot of study, and I wish I could remember the exact numbers, but let's put it this way: the number of cap horses disproportionately was represented by those two scenarios you mentioned, wire to wire and best closer, last move in a burn up. That's when slower with the air quotes horses can beat faster horses. I mean, it's almost like the tortoise and the hare was written by a horse player. But anyway, I digress. Let's get back to business here. We do have this is a wonderful thing about the summer. It's a Friday, and we have 2 stakes races to talk about. The other one is the Rick Violet Stakes, named after the horseman and horseman advocate who racing lost just a few years ago. This is a 1.16 mile turf race for 3-year-old New York breds. And Matt, we'll keep it with you.
I guess the tough thing here is when you're picking a horse that you may not know if they're actually going to run or not until day of. But I went to the 3 Newland, who is cross-entered in a race on Saturday at Saratoga. So I guess there's a chance that this one won't go. But if she does for George Weaver, I thought her return race, I think you'll probably watch the tape and you look at the running line and you go, what was the excuse? She's pocketed up down the inside. She had the run of the race and then she just got flat. To me, that is the argument, that she ran kind of like a short horse, where she was involved. She was in decent position at the top of the lane, and she just got short over that final 16th. That was off of the better part of a 7-month layoff. I think she needed that one. Now you get her up to Saratoga. I think she could work out a similar trip in here. And I don't want to say I don't love the shorter prices in here. I think the DePaz horse, the 6, is the one to beat in here. Miguel Clement's horse, Caroline Street Beat on the outside, could certainly get the job done. Voodoo Doll hasn't done anything wrong. She's 3 for 3, but I don't think they're so far superior to the rest of the field that I wouldn't want to take a shot. So assuming she goes or he goes, I got to stop getting them crisscrossed. I'll go to the 3 Newland.
I think sometimes, Lynn, anytime it's like a female name in the male horse, it's easy to get confused. But yeah, funny enough, I have the exact same horse as you. Newland, I guess it's a double case. It's maybe needed the run, but it's also, I'll always take notice, especially on that jump from 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, when you see that big figure improvement. And this one went from a 66 to a 77. And if you can say there's going to be another forward move, then he's as fast as anybody. And I just also like when you go back through basically all of his races, or at least the last 3, that improving tactical speed that should mean that he gets the right kind of trip. I respect the 6 a little at first. That horse would be on all the horizontals, but I'm with you. Let's see if Newland decides to go here. Let's see if maybe Newland could get the money for us. 10 to 1 here. What is it? Did you take a look at the Saturday? I'll admit, I have not looked at Saturday Saratoga yet. Do you feel like, is it a stakes, a harder stake, or something more ambitious? Or do you think is it like a 50-50? Where do we think this horse is actually going to run?
I've not actually looked at the Saturday card, so I don't know
Gotcha.
what that other spot would be. Maybe you just entered here to get a look and see who else was going to go, and you look for. My guess would be it's a softer spot. You're still eligible for the M1X, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So, I don't know. I appreciate taking a look and seeing and saying, look, this field, you brought it up. If you get any improvement, you're a major threat. If you just run back to that race and you're just fitter, you're still right there. The fastest number coming into this is a horse that came out of an N2L race. So I just, whenever you've got a horse in good form, I would always go to the harder spot. And I know that a lot of people think that that's insanity, especially if you think about it just from a class standpoint. But if you've got a runner that's in good form and you think is going the right direction, I don't buy into the whole idea that you're suddenly going to break them, that they're suddenly going to completely lose confidence after if it doesn't work here, then you can back them up. But if they're in good form right now and ready to go, take a shot.
Yeah, that's a good one to actually ask a horseman at some point what the thought process is. And I think it's all like, depending on where they are in their development, and just, they're individuals, and some of them are going to be stronger mentally than others. All right, I'm looking at the race now. Newland is in AE on Saturday, so that makes me feel certainly a little bit better about maybe they're choosing the Friday spot. And it's not like he'd be the fastest horse in here. You got horses running numbers just as fast. It feels to me like maybe they're just going to go ahead and take the shot in this stake, and hopefully we can get this one across the wire first for us. Let's get to the last race on the Saratoga Friday card. We will take a moment at the end to talk about some win and you're in action. There's some international win and you're ins. I'll do a separate video covering those, hopefully with my buddy Adam Mills over from TPD. But we'll talk about the Bing Crosby at the end of the show. But before we get to that, let's talk about this inner turf race that closes things out. We're going 1.5 miles for the maiden. I love that. Something a little different, something a little interesting, and someplace where maybe, just maybe, we can fish for some long shots when it comes to the contest and all the late picks at Saratoga on Friday, Matt. How are we going to get paid?
Oh, this is my kind of race to wrap things up. If we only ever ran 12 furlong turf races, I would be a happy boy. 2 horses I looked at. We'll start with, I think, the more logical runner, the 2 limited edition. Blinkers come off after the failed try last time. Showed pace in that spot for Phil Antonacci. Second start of the form cycle, stretching out in distance now. And the reason that's the first one I'll bring up is just simply we oftentimes talk about tactics. Pace in these 1.5 mile races goes a long way. And I don't know that the 2 makes the lead, but this one's handy enough to make me think that you probably work out a decent trip. I can't imagine 6-1 happens. I think this horse comes down a little bit from there, just given the numbers and the running style. I'm going to go to, if you remember back to the video you and I did for Belmont Stakes weekend, I believe it was the nightcap, if I'm not mistaken. And I had brought up that I liked Daunting, who was debuting for Pletcher. And I know Todd's numbers have been a little all over the place here, excuse me, at Saratoga to start. But this is a horse for Mike Rapoli that is bred to be actually a pretty good turf runner. The second dam was a Group 1 winner over in Europe. Wooten Bassett, we know, he all-world stallion. And the debut doesn't look all that sexy on paper, but he was 100 wide off the far turn. And he didn't make up any ground, but I mean, he finished his final 2 quarters were in 23 and 23. So it's not as though he wasn't running. And I like that they're going to stretch him out. He should be more forward. I don't think he's impossible in here.
No, I mean, I was probably subconsciously plagiarizing you, but because we're going to win or lose together. That was the number that I put down right on top of my tickets. I thought Daunting was interesting here. Normal second out improvement. And you say didn't make up any ground, but I mean, from the middle of the race to the end of the race, did make up 4 lengths. And I think it is more important what you point out about the clock and just the pedigree. Wooten Bassett, Galileo Cross. I mean, this horse should be extremely at home doing what is going to really stretch a lot of these others. If I'm playing horizontals, I'm probably not getting beat by Gold Sovereign, has all the experience, has gone long. Another one just on the pedigree, 1.5 mile maiden race. I'm probably not going to feel good if I let myself get beat by the English Channel Kittens Joy Cross, but far less exciting than the 8 runner. Is Daunting your top pick in here, or would you call your top pick limited edition?
No, I'd put the 8 on top because I think you're going to get a better price there. I think if you're looking for a likelier winner, so you brought up like your multis, if you're playing a pick 3 or you're wrapping up a pick 5, I don't think you can leave the 2 off, especially depending on what you think of the rest of the sequence along the way. But I like Daunting in here. I thought the debut, like you said, and I agree, maybe I was a bit unkind the way I explained that, but it didn't look like he was making up any appreciable ground just because everybody else completely sprinted home. And he was wide. He's going to be far more forwardly placed. That part I feel pretty confident about. I don't know if he's going to be on the lead. I think the pace projector actually had him right up there on the front. I'd be surprised about that. But if he's sitting third down the backside, I think he's going to have a very good chance to get this thing done, or at least outrun his odds. I would think he goes off in that 6, 7, 8 to 1 range.
With that pedigree, that grindy Galileo blood, couldn't you just see? Yeah, if you can be prominent, he might just be able to outstay them.
Yes,
and it doesn't have to be on the lead. It could be anywhere up in the vanguard. So, horse, I'm getting more excited about betting as we talk about it. Let's take a minute, Matt, before we get out of here on this ITM Horseplayers Tour show for Friday. Once again, we encourage folks to go to horseplayers.com and get involved. Just $20, and the house cut goes to charity. I do want to talk about the Breeders' Cup Win and You're In race that's happening domestically on Saturday. It's the Bing Crosby Stakes out at Del Mar. Have you had a look?
I have. I think it's a very competitive race. And I don't know that you have a proper standout in here. I think a lot of people are going to just assume Cornucopian goes off as the favorite for Baffert's barn on the heels of that win in the Aristides. Good horse. He's been a little bit quirky at times. Lead changes are a little lackluster, which I'm a little worried about because he'd been gone for such a long time after they tried that rush job to get him into the Derby Trail and all that kind of stuff. He makes sense. Dr. Venkman, I can't believe he's only 6. I feel like he's been around for 100 years. But it just, he's a good quality old runner. Stronghold, if this race were at 7/8, if this were the Pat O'Brien, I think I'd really like Stronghold. I don't love him at 6. He feels to me like that kind of horse that's 7/8, 1 turn miler. He's done well going longer as well. My unknown is the inside runner, is Maximum Bourbon, because I remember seeing him at the fairgrounds over the winter. He ran very well, very competitive. You thought he was going to be a good one, but I didn't foresee 102s and 103s coming from him. I thought he'd be sort of that high level allowance, maybe a listed stakes type. Well, that's what they did. They went through that restricted St. Matthews and he dump trucked a good field. Now they really test him. You could tell me that he wins comfortably or he gets tested from the inside and cracks and is nowhere at the end. But he is the X factor to me in this race because there's still theoretically a forward move in him. He's only raced, 6 times?
I had to go with Dr. Venkman in here, and it's twofold. The old boy, horse for course, obviously at Del Mar. We all see that jumps off the page. But it's also about the trips these horses want. I feel like so many of them want the same forward trip. I think he can maybe sit just in behind that vanguard, not too far back, attack on the turn, show that class, and get it done for the old guys.
He might be able to. I mean, this is his game. Del Mar, he's 4 for 7 lifetime. That's where all of his career wins have come. This distance, oddly enough, he's 0 for 3. I mean, that's shocking to me because he feels like a crack 6 furlong type in my mind. And the versatility that he's got, he has shown a willingness to go forward in the past, but he's certainly not without a chance if he sits and tries to finish. It's a really good race, and I think you'll get a pretty good gauge of where these horses stack up. Big picture, right? We know on the East Coast, you got the Bookham Danos of the world. Unfortunately, Ben Tornado has been sidelined, but we know the 3-year-old sprinters are very, very good. That's probably where the real cream of the crop for the entire 3-year-old period, boys or girls. The sprinters are really nice. This is a group here that I could see them being fringe contenders for the Breeders' Cup Sprint, depending on what they do going forward. And Cornucopian, maybe I mean, what do you think of him? Am I being a bit unkind by saying I don't love his quirks?
I was like you in the way that I looked at it originally. JK was a little bit more enthusiastic, but I think it was one of those where JK said, I really want to see how this horse, I want to hear the absolute latest on how this horse is working. And that's going to be the difference maker for me. And that's probably pretty smart with a horse like this, right? To just try to get all that latest information. I mean, the work tab looks fast, but they always look fast with Baffert. Yeah. And I don't know that we will have a proper clocker report because, of course, he's been like Baffert himself back in Kentucky rather than at Del Mar. So, yeah, he's a horse that I would use, but for me, it would be a little bit more defensively. There is a chance he's going to be the best horse in the race and just blow this thing apart, but I'm just holding back something about him and the unusuality, I guess you could say, to make up a word, of his the way he's always been campaigned gives me just a little bit of pause. I wouldn't want to ride in alone with him. Let's put it that way.
Do you make anything of now? Maybe off the top of your head better than I would. The Vanderbilt is in what, 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think that is part of the super card coming up in 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken.
So do you make it? This horse has been in Kentucky for months now. What did you make anything of that rather than go to Saratoga that you're going to put him on a plane or ship him all the way back to California?
I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the Baffert MO right now, right? With being running plenty of horses. Well, he's run 5, I think, so far at Del Mar, and I still think he has a lot of. It's obviously, of course, it's on his mind, but yeah, I mean, the success he's had in New York, you would think, unless does he have somebody else for there?
Maybe.
I'll have to, I'll look at it might be that kind of deal where he's
imagination. I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and it's another wrinkle trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, it's still one of the most powerful barns in the country, but obviously being operated a little bit differently. That's part of the reason why maybe I'm thinking, you know what, I've got my angle, and my angle on Venkman at the end of the day is mostly just a, well, cornucopia to me. It's just one of many horses who wants that same trip. I could see them getting in a little bit of a tussle, and it's just setting up for that perfect, slipstream kind of move. So we'll see how it plays out. You mentioned those 3-year-olds, Englishman certainly at the top of that look, along with the Baffert's talented runner. But that 115 Beyer speed figure going to be really interesting to see what he does for an encore. Not sure if it'll be presumably the Amsterdam where he turns up next, but it's going to be fun watching this fight along to the Breeders' Cup Sprint. It could be really interesting where we have these distinct groups all coming together at Keeneland later this year. Any closing thoughts from you, Matt, or should we send this one home?
No, I'm looking forward to the weekend. We're getting some grade 1 action going on. And then, like you say, before you know it, we got a big weekend up at the spa in a couple of weeks. Journalism, any thoughts?
Yeah, let's talk about him for a second. I you know how I get uncomfortable when they stop breaking, and
Yeah.
this one, it wasn't as clear. This wasn't as clear. There was a gate hitting here that wasn't the same kind of, oh, I've lost my speed, like what happened to Arrogant at a certain point. Hey, he won on his class. He beat the field in front of him, but the 94 Beyer speed figure is not his normal game. I'm inclined. I've called him my cliff horse in the past, the one I'll follow off a cliff because I like him so much. So I'm going to. I have a hard head debate here, where the head is saying I'm not so sure, and the heart is saying let's just keep following him. Let's. He'll get his better circumstances and he'll move along. What was your read on that?
Well, you bring up the gate break thing. I mean, that has become. You can't speak of journalism and not talk about that, right? Because now you're spotting everyone lengths. And that it's one thing when you're running against the field you are in the San Diego. It's another thing when you're taking on, the elite of the elite. No disrespect to the horses and the people that he ran against. I probably say this too frequently, but I think anytime that you get into a little bit of a lull like this, I think you just kind of like sit back and go, okay, let's say we're running in all these grade ones. Let's say it's the Breeders' Cup Classic. How likely is it that we can spot however many horses lengths and then still be the best closer in the race? That's still up for debate.
Yeah.
I would almost want to, I don't want to say hit reset right now. I would try him on the turf and just see, even if it doesn't work, if it's a failed experiment, so what? I want to see if there's another option, because I have a hard time seeing him winning major grade 1 races from here on out. I don't think he's ever progressed. And whenever I've said that, it sounds like a slight. It's not. It's the same as that analogy we always make of the little leaguer, or the 12-year-old that throws 75 miles an hour and he looks like Pedro Martinez when they're all in middle school, but then he doesn't get any better and everyone else continues to progress. And by the end of it, yeah, he's a decent player, but he's not like the star that he was. And I feel like that's the trajectory we're on with journalism. If you tried the grass, maybe you just give him a new lease on his racing career, which I know is probably done at the end of this year anyway. But I don't know, if I'm thinking of bigger picture races down the road, how's he gonna win the Classic? How would he even win the Dirt Mile? How's he gonna win the Awesome again? How's he gonna win the Pacific Classic if Baffert sounds like he's running NISOs? I don't know, man. He's still a really good horse. I think he's kind of hit a bit of a plateau.
I think that's fair. I think he deserves a shot to do the Pacific Classic again, though. NISOS or no NISOS. I just think I want to see one more. And right, if he was going to be campaign next year, I think your idea is excellent. But the silks he was wearing last weekend are a tip of what he'll be doing next year, and it ain't gonna be racing as he was in the Coolmore, the Tabor Coolmore colors. But it one of my favorites of recent vintage. No matter what happens next, I get where you're going with that, but I think, how cool would it be if he could repeat in that race? I'm excited. It'll be fun from a sporting point of view, if nothing else.
Well, and all the people involved, right? He's got all the best of the best as far as human connections are concerned. Everybody that is involved with this horse, they're all great people, right? But I think you can separate that part where you're not trying to say anything offensive or offend anyone. There's nothing that they've done wrong. It's just, I think the horse has hit a point where maybe he's just a little, I don't even want to say dull. That's not the right way to put it. Maybe he's just not quite, maybe the zip on the fastball, instead of it being 100, maybe it's 97. But that 3 miles an hour at the highest level, that's the difference between a strikeout and a home run.
I'm loving all the baseball analogies. And Pedro Martinez, the perfect player to bring up for this Mets
The
Red
Red
Sox
Sox have
fan
won a
duo.
million games in a row. We're delirious.
Oh, my team laying down for 3 before the break didn't hurt. I'll say that much. But anyway, that's a tangent for another show. We're out of time. I kept you overtime, Matt. Thank you for bearing with and also reminding us to have the journalism combo, because I think, not mistaken, I think JK and I forgot to do that on Monday. It was one of those really stressful shows on Monday where the battery was running low.
Oh,
So
no.
I was trying. Oh, it was so bad. I thought it was charging all night. I was in the trailer in the woods. It was rough. Not fancy like we are here today, but appreciate you and all you do. And I say we do it again next week and have great racing all summer long. And the ITM Horseplayers Tour continues. Make sure to check it out over at horseplayers.com. For Matt Bernier, I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos.